When was the last time you had a deep face-to-face conversation with someone who really knows you? A real moment of connection where you felt seen, heard, and understood. What if I told you that neglecting those kinds of moments is actually cutting years off your life? I know, it sounds extreme, right? But there's solid science behind this. Not making time for those genuine in-person connections can be as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Can you believe that? Stick around because we're going to dive into the actual science of why making time for these relationships is not only important for your mental health, it's also vital for your physical health too. Yes, I'm talking about living longer, aging better, and even avoiding disease. And hang around to the end because I'm going to give you 5 excellent tips for building meaningful connection into your life. Here's the thing. Some of us, at least speaking for myself, after the pandemic became so used to staying at home that we actually got comfortable in it. We adapted. And I get it. After all, solitude, whether it's you and your honey or just you, it can be peaceful, right? It can feel safe. But here's the truth. Comfortable doesn't always mean optimal. Just because we've gotten used to something doesn't mean it's what's best for us in the long run. But it doesn't mean we just go and immerse ourselves in a large group of people either. There's a big difference between being with others and feeling connected. In fact, in my 20s, I lived in New York City and I had a very full social life, but it was one of the loneliest times of my life because I had lots of friends and acquaintances, but not that real authentic connection where you feel like they really care about you. Hey, it's your friend Rena, and today I want to have a real conversation with you about the importance of human connection. Why it's absolutely critical for your mental health and physical health to connect often with true friends. Not just casual chats or superficial friendships, but those deep, meaningful relationships where you can be truly yourself, the kind where you can really open up, be vulnerable, and trust that the other person has your back, no matter what. Okay, so here's what I've been thinking about. There's so much out there that teaches us, how to lose weight, how to find your soulmate, how to be a better leader, a better parent. But what we all really need to practice and to teach our kids is how to be a better friend, how to cultivate true, lasting friendships that make life richer and more fulfilling, right? It's almost like the importance of friendship has been just overlooked, even though it's one of the most crucial aspects of our well-being. And that's especially true for men. I think we women are far better at getting together and nurturing our friendships, yet still there are so many times when we don't get together just because it's frankly easier not to. A Friday night rolls around and we just want to order in, wrap ourselves in a cozy blanket on the couch and watch Netflix. Think about all the mental health challenges people are facing today, whether it's coping with stress, anxiety, depression, addiction, or even our obsession with health and wellness and self-care. When you look at the data and what we see on documentaries like, Blue Zones, friendship, connection, community, that is honestly the ultimate biohack. It's like the missing piece of the well-being puzzle. The thing that can help us heal and thrive in ways we never even realized we needed. We just don't prioritize enough. These kinds of authentic relationships aren't just nice to have. They're absolutely essential. And yet most of us are letting them slip through the cracks. So if you've ever felt like you're too busy for that coffee with a new friend or that dinner with an old friend, trust me, I've been there too. We can't afford to keep putting these connections off, especially as we get older, because we're no longer connecting with other moms at, say, our kids' soccer games and birthday parties. It takes more of an effort now. You know that feeling, right? When you've been meaning to catch up with someone important to you, maybe it's your best friend, your sister, or even just a neighbor you love chatting with. But something always comes up. We say, next month when things slow down, or I'll get to it when I'm not so swamped. And suddenly a month has gone by, or maybe even longer. I used to do this all the time. In fact, there was a point in my life where I was so caught up in being productive and, getting things done, that I kind of lost sight of the people who made my life the most meaningful. It wasn't that I didn't care about them. I absolutely did. I just kept pushing those connections to the bottom of the list because I was just, I don't know, too busy focusing on everything else. Kids, work, my endless to-do list. I'm sure you probably get it. But even recently, post-pandemic, I'm the extrovert in my marriage. My husband's the introvert. And ironically, even he said to me recently, Rena, we need to invite people over more. And we need to make an effort to get out of the house and see our friends more. And as I've said already, it's not just because time with friends is fun. According to the data, and I'll get to that in a second, I promise, it's actually super important for our well-being. When we don't connect with true friends on a regular basis, we're actually harming ourselves in ways we don't even realize. So lately, Rick and I have been making a real effort to connect more often in person with friends. Whether it's inviting a few people over for dinner, and by the way, real friends don't care what you're serving or if your house looks perfect, so don't use that as an excuse. Or maybe setting aside time and money to go visit faraway friends for a couple of days, whether it's a guy's weekend, a girl's weekend, or just making time to see family. Now, before I dive into the science and all that, I want to get really clear about something. When I talk about the importance of human connection, I'm talking about real friendships. I think you get that, right? The friendships where you can truly be yourself. The kind where you can share your highs and your lows and you know that the person sitting across from you will still love you and support you no matter what. I'm not talking about those surface level friendships that, never go deeper than a certain level, or where the person only wants to talk about themselves and their perfect children and all their accomplishments. And I'm definitely not talking about transactional relationships, the one where it feels like the person sees you more as a resource than a real friend, where they're more concerned with how they can gain from the friendship rather than just really enjoying your company. I know that sounds kind of cynical, but it happens sometimes. I've seen it. You know what I'm talking about, right? Real connection is built on trust, vulnerability, and the ability to show up as your authentic self. These are the friendships where you can laugh until your stomach hurts or cry without feeling embarrassed, where you can open up about your struggles and trust that everything you confess will stay in the vault. That sacrosanct, locked vault of true friendship where you know that neither of you will repeat anything the other says. Those are the friendships I'm talking about. You don't feel judged or mistreated. You can just sit in comfortable silence even and just be together, knowing that that's enough. These are the kinds of relationships I'm talking about. The ones that truly nourish your soul, not drain it. Because, at the end of the day, those are the friendships that make life feel full and rich. And it's those friendships that have the power to transform your health, your happiness, and your sense of purpose. You don't need a ton of those friendships, even just a small handful is plenty. But here's the thing. How often do we say we're too busy? Life gets crazy, right? We're juggling work, family, obligations, and all the little things that need to get done. So when someone says, hey, I'd love to see you, let's catch up, most people are vague and brush them off and throw the responsibility back on the friend by saying, oh my God, I'm totally swamped the next several weeks, but text me next month and let's put something on the calendar. Instead, why not put something on the calendar right now? Even if it's for 6 weeks away, you'll have it there. If you put the onus on the other person to get back to you when you supposedly will have come up for air, not to be harsh, but you're kind of blowing them off by making them make the effort. At which point you'll probably say once again, oh sorry, I'm busy for the next 6 weeks. But let's face it, we make time for what matters, right? And connection, it matters. It matters for our mental well-being, our emotional health, and as I've said, even our physical health. I get it. We're all juggling a million things, and it is important to have boundaries and time for ourselves, of course. But we have to stop telling ourselves that we don't have time for connection. Because when we don't make time for it, we're actually hurting ourselves more than we realize. Once I understood that, I knew I needed to start treating my friendships like they were just as important as anything else in my life. Think about it this way. If you can make time to hit the gym, tackle your to-do list, or watch your favorite TV show, then you can make time for the people who fill you up emotionally. So let's explore why this matters so much and how you can start building more of these life-changing connections, even when life feels like it's coming at you from all directions. Here's why it matters so much. Human connection isn't just a nice to have, as I said before. It's essential for your health. Okay, so let's talk about why. Our bodies are literally wired for connection. There's this hormone called oxytocin. It's often called the love hormone. And it's released when we have meaningful, preferably in-person interactions with people we care about. Oxytocin does some pretty amazing things for us, you guys. It reduces stress, lowers our blood pressure, and makes us feel more calm, collected, and connected. It's like nature's way of rewarding us for showing up for each other. But it's not just oxytocin. When we laugh with someone, have a deep, meaningful conversation, or even just share a hug, our brains also release dopamine and serotonin, those feel-good chemicals that help regulate our mood and keep us balanced. So these little interactions, as small as they might seem, have a huge impact on our overall well-being. Now let's flip it. When we don't have those connections, when we're isolated or socially disconnected, our bodies respond, and not in a good way. Studies led by holt-lunstad, a professor of psychology and neuroscience, found that social isolation can be as harmful to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15 cigarettes! So clearly it's not just about feeling lonely. It's about what that loneliness does to our bodies. When we're emotionally lonely, we're more likely to suffer from chronic stress, even if we're happily married or in a relationship. Without adequate social connection, our bodies go into this kind of, fight or flight mode, which increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, and puts us at a greater risk for all sorts of health issues like heart disease, stroke, and even cognitive decline. There's this one study I read recently that found socially isolated adults are 64% more likely to develop dementia. That is a staggering number. It really drives home how critical it is to keep those connections strong, especially as we get older. On the flip side, those who maintain strong social connections have a lower risk of heart disease, lower blood pressure, and better mental health overall. There's even research showing that people who have regular face-to-face interactions are 50% less likely to experience depression. Okay, let me share a personal story that really brought all of this home for me. Just this past weekend, I flew down to Houston for a mini reunion with two of my best friends from college. To be honest, I kind of didn't want to go. I mean, I did, but I live near Boston, so Houston felt far and kind of inconvenient. The flight wasn't cheap, and I had a ton of work on my plate. But I didn't want to be the one party pooper out of 3 who fanked out on it, so I went. Well, let me tell you, I didn't realize how much I needed that time with them until I was there. Life had just gotten busy, work, family, everything else, and we let time slip by without really connecting. I mean, sure, obviously we texted, we called once in a while, but it's not the same, So we finally made it happen. We got together in person, and it was like no time had passed at all. We laughed, we cried, we told old stories. It was so simple, but it was exactly what my heart needed. I came back home feeling just lighter, more at peace, and honestly healthier and happier. I didn't realize just how much I'd been missing that connection until I had it again. And it made me think about how easy it is to let those relationships slip by when life gets in the way. But here's what I know for sure. Those in-person moments matter. They're healing. So if you've been pushing off reconnecting with someone because you're too busy, I want to challenge you to make time for it. You won't regret it. But what happens when we don't make time for those personal connections? When we keep telling ourselves we'll get to it later, we'll do it next time. The truth is, when we stop prioritizing those face-to-face relationships, we start to feel it, whether we realize it or not. That disconnection can creep in slowly. Sure, you may see tons of people at work every day, but that's different. Maybe you start feeling a little more alone, perhaps a little bit more adrift, or just less you. Sometimes it's hard to put your finger on it. It's like there's this void you can't quite fill no matter how much you try to distract yourself with other things. And again, that's not to say you don't have an amazing connection with your honey if you're married or in a relationship. But it's not fair to expect your one partner to be all things to you, to fill all those roles, to fulfill you. And it's not just an emotional thing, it's physical too. Studies have found that loneliness and isolation can weaken our immune systems, mess with our sleep patterns, and even make us more prone to developing chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes. I mean, it's wild when you think about it. Just the simple act of being with people we care about can have such a profound impact on our overall health. And when we don't have that, it's like we're depriving our bodies of something they really need. As we get older, these connections become even more important too. But here's the tricky part. As life changes, whether it's retirement, kids growing up and moving out, or even just losing touch with people, it can feel like those opportunities for connection start to disappear. I think about my parents sometimes and how their social circles have changed as they've gotten older. They retired, so they weren't surrounded by coworkers or neighbors in the same way they used to be. And for a while, I kind of saw them start to pull back and isolate themselves, not on purpose. It's just something I think a lot of us go through as we age. The ways we used to connect just don't always exist anymore. And if we're not intentional about building new connections, it's easy to slip into that isolation without realizing it. But here's the good news. It's never too late to build or rebuild those connections. We just have to make it a priority. So how do you do that? How do we make sure that we're not letting these important relationships slip away, even when life gets busy? Well, here are a few things that have worked for me. 1, schedule it in. I know, it might sound a little rigid, but honestly, putting time for connection on your calendar is a game changer. Whether it's a standing lunch date with a friend, a weekly call with someone in your family, or even just a coffee break with a colleague, scheduling it makes it real. It turns it from something you hope to do into something you're committed to do. 2, start small. Don't feel like you need to plan huge, elaborate get-togethers. Even just a quick coffee date or a 20-minute walk with someone can make a huge difference. It's about quality, not quantity. 3, be intentional. I think we underestimate how much time we actually have. We spend hours scrolling through social media or binge-watching shows. But what if we used some of that time to connect with the people who matter most? It doesn't have to be a big production. Just a little intentionality goes a long way. 4, reach out. Is there someone in your life you've lost touch with? Maybe an old friend or a family member you haven't spoken to in a while? Take the first step and reach out. You might be surprised at how easily that connection comes back once you open the door. 5, join a community. Whether it's a book club, a hiking group, or a volunteer organization, being part of a community can open up so many opportunities for connection. It's a great way to meet new people and build meaningful, lasting relationships. So at the end of the day, here's what I've learned. Human connection is not a luxury. It's not something we should just squeeze in when we have time. It's something we need to prioritize because it's so important to our happiness, our health, and our well-being, especially as we get older. So this week, I want to challenge you to make time for just one person. Maybe it's a friend you've been meaning to catch up with for a long time, or a family member you haven't called in a while. Whatever it is, make the time. And if this message resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need a little reminder about the power of connection. And it would mean the world to me if you'd leave a comment and tell me if this resonates with you. What do you do to get together and connect with your people? Together we can start making more time for things that truly matter. So thanks for hanging out with me today, friend. I'll see you soon.